Welcome. It is Monday night. It's great to have you with us. It's great to have everybody on tonight, and tonight it's going to be a great night. So, thank you for being on tonight. Thank you for being here with us tonight, and I'm looking forward to everything God's going to do. This week, we're going to be talking about salvation in Samaria. Salvation in Samaria. An interesting study that I wanted to do with everybody on the city or region of Samaria in the New Testament. If you've got your Bibles, I want you to go to John chapter 4. As everybody's hopping on, I want you to like the broadcast, if you would, share the broadcast, if you would, help us get the word out. That's going to be huge. Help us get the word out to everybody. But thank you for hopping on. John chapter 4. John chapter 4. Good evening to everybody. And thank you for being on tonight. Man, what a powerful Resurrection Sunday service yesterday was. And it's just going to continue to get better and better. Just going to continue to get better and better. Here at the church and all over the place. So I pray everybody as well had a great Resurrection Sunday, not just me. I know Jesus had a great Resurrection Sunday, great day for him. So that's pretty awesome. And there is some big news today, which I kind of would like to cover a little bit on the front end, but at the same time, I feel like maybe, I don't know, give people a couple more minutes to hop on. But some major news today. Some major stuff going in the news. It's pretty crazy. But anyway, I'll give people, again, just a couple more minutes to hop on and to join with us. A great Monday. I bet that this Monday has a name. Let me see if I can chat GPT it. What is the Monday after Resurrection Sunday called? Oh. Well, so it's commonly referred to as Easter Monday, I guess. But I'm not big on the term Easter, so I'm kind of like a little bit iffy on the roots of that term. So let's see, what about Tuesday? See if Tuesday has anything. See if tomorrow's got anything with it. It doesn't have a name. But some traditions, especially in Eastern Orthodox and certain Catholic regions, it is celebrated and known as Bright Week. Bright Monday, Bright Tuesday. All right, Bright Week. I can get with that. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Okay, anyway, I wonder if the schools are on today. I wonder if the schools were on. Let me see here. What is today? April 21st? Oh, so there is no school today. Schools are closed. Wow. Fascinating. Man, I'll tell you, teachers will do anything to get a day off. This is not hate towards teachers. This is respect towards teachers. My father was an English teacher for a lot of the time when I was growing up. And so this is just respect towards teachers. Nobody knows how to get time off like teachers. I'm telling you, it's like, especially public school teachers are on another level. Public school, which I'm not saying this negatively towards public school teachers. I have a lot of respect towards public school teachers. Teach 9 months out of the year, and then also the months that they teach, you've got like fall break. You've got like a Thanksgiving break. You've got Christmas break, which is probably 2-3 weeks. You've got spring break. Apparently, you just get a long weekend for Resurrection Sunday. Obviously, Good Friday, I understand that, but then the next Monday, okay. Uh, here you have hurricane days. Up north, you have snow days. I will just say nobody nobody knows how to get time off like teachers. That's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah. That's at least how I feel about it. But it's a great day. It's hilarious to me actually that they have today off. Man, teachers do get tons of time off. Just tons of time. And then they always have the teacher like half days. When they're not doing anything. Huh. Interesting. All right, what's the last day of school? First and last student day? June 3rd. Okay. This is all Lee County School District, is what I'm talking. For those of you that come here to get your Lee County, Florida school calendar news. Anyway, great day to be on. Great day, or great day that today is. One piece of news. Now that I've given people a minute to hop on and a minute to join us, pretty significant. Pope Francis died this morning, and I believe it was this morning in like Italy, which is where he is. So right after Resurrection Sunday, on Resurrection Monday, he's gone. Pope Francis out. He passed away, and I think it was about 4 a.m. is when the news hit. 4 a.m. Eastern time in the U.S. So what's that in Italy? Probably 10, 11 in Italy, at the Vatican. And I don't know. I haven't seen anything officially in terms of like cause of death. Other than that, I know that he was sick. I know he was sick. So I assume it was related to that. Pretty wild that he met JD Vance for the first time yesterday. So he died within 24 hours of meeting JD Vance. The other thing that's pretty crazy is he did the little ride around through what is it they call it, St. Peter's Square, there right by the Vatican for Resurrection Sunday, because it's a big thing, obviously. It's the biggest day in the church calendar, and then also especially for the Vatican and for the Catholic Church, which is so holds to the maybe is a little bit more liturgical or a little bit more like centered around that stuff than most Protestant churches. And so he took a little ride out there. You have to hope, obviously, that wasn't like a contributing factor. And the other thing was, if you see the pictures of him meeting with JD Vance, he doesn't look good. Like he's just got this stare in his eyes, like a blank stare, and he's just kind of like looking off. It's not a great look. And so I saw the pictures, but I actually saw the pictures before I knew that he passed. And the pictures that I saw, I was like, okay, he doesn't look good. I'm not sure how much longer he has left. And then, but people have been worried about this for a while. People have known this was coming for a while. But pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. Trending on Twitter. So now the Catholics have to choose a new pope. Pope Francis was the first Latin American pope. He was from Argentina, I believe. I may be from Buenos Aires. And that's pretty crazy. He was also the first Jesuit pope, which I know a little bit about the Jesuits because I went. What am I saying? I mean, I did go to a Jesuit college for like one semester. Not because I was interested in the Jesuits, just because they gave me a scholarship and I could get a bunch of credits done for a low price. So, uh, anyway, I didn't really learn anything about the Jesuits, but pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. So some people are now suggesting that JD Vance is the Antichrist, but I don't think so. Not at this point. For me, that's not yeah. Yeah, that's not what I think. Anyway, let's do this. John chapter 4. John chapter 4 is where I want you to go. And we're talking this week, what I want to talk about is I really shouldn't start with John chapter 4. Because if I start with John chapter 4, I feel like I'm going to have to explain a ton of the context for everything I'm talking about this week kind of as we go. But maybe I'll give a little bit more history. But a lot of people don't know this. But you have basically a region that's kind of like north of Jerusalem. I would say maybe, this is off the top of my head, maybe an hour north of Jerusalem if you're driving. So pretty close, relatively close to Jerusalem. And it's called Samaria. And the region of Samaria, one thing you may hear a lot is people when they talk about what they call the West Bank in Israel today, which is because it's on the west bank of the Jordan River, or what they refer to as the West Bank of, or what they refer to as Judea and Samaria. You have the region of Samaria, right? And the region of Samaria, ultimately in the Hebrew, it's called Shomron. And what basically happened there was this. This is the account of the Jewish people. By the time of Jesus, you had people that the Jews, specifically like the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and in general, the Jewish people did not like the Samaritans, which were the people that inhabited Samaria, right? They had a strong dislike towards the Samaritans. And the reason was that basically the Jewish people, their account of the Samaritans, which you've probably heard the term Good Samaritan, and Jesus plays on kind of like the cultural feelings that were going on then. But basically, they viewed the Samaritans as people who had basically taken the Jewish religion and perverted it. Okay. And so it's kind of like, if I can give you some modern examples to help you understand the feeling, because basically what happened was this: the Samaritans had their own law, they had their own Torah of 5 books that they claimed were the real 5 books of Moses. Which were similar, like it's similar, but it's slightly different. They have a different mountain that they worship. So you obviously know that Jerusalem and Mount Zion is huge for the Jewish people. And so the Samaritans had their own version of that in Samaria, and it was Mount Gerizim. And they said that that's really where Abraham sacrificed Isaac, and not at Mount Zion or Mount Moriah, where Abraham sacrificed Isaac. So there were all these, there were basically all these conflicts. And really, the idea is this, is that, let me look this up so that I can find the right account from the Old Testament, because it actually touches on the origin of the Samaritans. In 2 Kings. Here's where it is. 2 Kings 17. The idea on the origin of the Samaritans is this. If you go back to 2 Kings 17, you have remember, the Jewish people under King David and King Solomon were one nation. And then what you have is King Rehoboam comes in, and Jeroboam leads a rebellion against Rehoboam because Rehoboam wants to tax the people, make things very difficult on the people. Rehoboam's Solomon's son. So basically, Jeroboam leads a rebellion. He gets 10 of the tribes, the 10 northern tribes, to team up against the 2 southern tribes, and basically starts his own kingdom in the north. So that's how you get Israel. And then in the south, you have Judah. Okay. 2 tribes in the south, Judah and Benjamin, 10 tribes in the north, that basically opposed so you had the northern Israel and you had southern Israel, right? Which southern Israel is usually called Judah. Okay, so this is super important. Then what happens is in 722 BC, so about 300 years later, because King David, King Solomon is around 1,000, okay? And so 722 BC, about 300 years down the road after they've split into their own kingdoms, you have the king of Assyria comes through, King Sennacherib, okay? And what he does is he conquers the north. He conquers the northern tribes. Now, the northern tribes is where a bunch of evil had gone on, because basically Jeroboam leads a rebellion, but when they lead a rebellion, he's like, well, I can't keep sending my people down to Jerusalem because Jerusalem was a part of the south. I can't keep sending my people down to Jerusalem to continue to worship there anymore. I need to make my own, because if everybody goes to Jerusalem to worship there, then all my people are going to be loyal to the southern kingdom because that's where they worship their God. So he said, we'll set up our own temple and our own idols. And so what he did was he set up a golden calf in Bethel and a golden calf in Dan. And those are the 2 golden calves that he sets up, I believe, in 1 Kings 11. And that basically is the start of the fall of the northern kingdom, because while the southern kingdom of Judah has all sorts of problems and all sorts of wickedness, and they also go after false gods and they also create high places, basically the northern 12 tribes kind of completely, in a lot of ways, they nearly completely forsake God and stop serving him. And so in the north is where you have Jezebel and Ahab, they're rulers of the north, because you have 2 different lineages now, right? You have the people that rule the south, and you have the people that rule the north. The north has some of the most famous, like, bad people of the Bible, and the south has some of the more famous, like, good people. Like, if you know King Hezekiah, he was a king of the south. If you know King Josiah, he was a king of the south. 2 kings that really led, like, reform, tried to get things back on track. In the north, it was a little bit different. You had, like, King Ahab. You had Jezebel. You had Jehu, who led a rebellion, but still, he didn't really get the people back on track with God. Never did they end up going back to the temple the way they were supposed to. So, that's kind of the split that you have between the two kingdoms. Then what happens is the king of Assyria, King Sennacherib, in 722 BC, 300 years later, like what God said was going to happen, he said, listen, if you don't obey me, if you don't do what I've told you to do, then I will send another nation and they'll carry you away captive. And that's exactly what happened. King Sennacherib comes through the north. Now, the north was much stronger than the south, to be honest. The north was a stronger kingdom. It was a bigger kingdom. You have 10 tribes versus 2 tribes. But King Sennacherib from Assyria, which is north of Israel, comes through, knocks out the northern 10 tribes of Israel, takes them into exile. The Assyrians are known for being the most brutal ancient empire. Okay. The way they treated people was brutal. A lot of different kingdoms, when they would conquer people, they would try and take care of the people. They would try and make sure the people could still worship their God. They would try and keep the people together, and they'd mix in. Not the Assyrians. The Assyrians were big on torture. The Assyrians were big on, when we conquer you, you're gonna be afraid of us. And so that's what the Assyrians did. And a big part of their strategy was, when they would conquer a nation and they would take the people into exile, because this is the custom, right? You would take people into exile and put them in different parts of your existing empire. And the reason for that is this: it's much easier to control people. Like, how are the 10 tribes going to revolt if you bring them and you put them in the cities that you already control, in other cities? They can't coordinate with each other and that sort of thing. Now, basically, what the Assyrians did that was a little bit different is, when they took the people into exile, they scattered the people. So they put a few people here, a few people there, a few people over there, but they would really, put them in all sorts of different countries. So what that had was a kind of like they used to refer to the United States. I liked this term, and they took this term away from the United States. They used to call it a melting pot. Now the liberals have called it like a salad bowl or something, which is just one of the gayest terms that you could come up with. But anyway, they used to call it a melting pot because everybody would, like, when you come to the United States, like, you keep, like, you have some parts of your tradition, but, like, you're American. Like, for me, my family's Italian, but if you ask me, like, I'm an American. I'm not an Italian living in America. I'm an American. And that's the same. That's the way that, because the thing is, like, which people don't understand this immigration-wise, but, like, as much as people would today consider, like, you see that you have strong Hispanic immigration into the United States, right? So as much as people would say, well, with all this, like, as much as people consider, like, the Hispanic community like its own thing within the United States of America, as much as they would say, like, you have, like, Americans and then you have Hispanics, right? And it's, like, considered different or separate or whatever, right? Because you're in the middle of this immigration of Hispanic and Latino countries into the United States. This is not a new thing. The same way that people consider that, like, that's its own people group coming into the United States of America. Like, that's what the Italians and the Irish were in the early 1900s. The Italians and the Irish were not, oh, here come, like, more people to be Americans. Like, they were separate, and they were, like, considered separate, and there was a lot of whatever. Like, you could say that there was a lot of racism towards them, or whatever you want to say. I don't know. There was a lot of that, like, okay, this is, we got a lot of these people coming into this country. Especially because those two cultures, majority Catholic, right? And the U.S. was really founded by Protestants. Protestants from England. So, but what happened is, it's a melting pot, right? And so then Italians, people like my family, which my family came in the, after World War II, ultimately, which was a little later than some other Italians had come. But I remember, like, in school, we did this project with, like, Ellis Island, and we had, like, a little day where we'd go to the gym, and it was like a pretend Ellis Island, and we'd dress like immigrants from whatever country our parents were from, and I dressed like an Italian immigrant. And in elementary school, we walked around the gym, and I got my passport and all my papers and all that stuff. And anyway, so it's a big thing, and that's how a bunch of people got to this country. And then they immigrate, they become a part of this country. It's just the natural process. My opinion is if Jesus tarries another 100 years, it's going to be much less of a distinction between, well, I don't know. Anyway, I don't want to forget that. So I'm talking about the Assyrians. So what the Assyrians would do is they scatter people all over the place, and then the people just assimilate to the culture wherever they go. Right? That's in contrast to, for example, the Babylonians, which I'm fast forwarding in history a little bit, but the Babylonians who were from like Iraq, that area, come to Israel. They're the ones who eventually exile the southern two tribes, eventually, and in 586 BC, so about 150 years later, a little less than 150 years later, they exile the southern two tribes. And when they did that, they generally kept the people together. That's why there was a group of exiles in Babylon. Now, here's the difference. They call the northern 10 tribes of Israel the lost tribes. The reason for that being that basically most of the 10 tribes of Israel, they didn't keep their Jewish identity when they were exiled into all these different places. They didn't continue to be Jewish. They just kind of went with the flow. So nobody knows who they are now. Okay? On the other hand, you have the southern two tribes, which were brought into Babylon and kind of kept together so they could keep worshiping their God, which is our God. They could keep going through the Jewish rituals and practices. And so they kept their identity. So then a few hundred years later, when actually, really it's 70 years later. 70 years later, when Cyrus the Great comes and gives the order, all right, you can go back to Jerusalem, then the people went back. And they kept their identity. They were able to go back to their land. Nehemiah, Ezra, all those guys led the exiles back to Jerusalem. So that was kind of the difference. But you have, in 722 BC, Sennacherib comes through, an Assyrian king comes through, takes out the northern 10 tribes. Some people, though, are left over because you can't take out the entire, like, it's a massive logistical process to take out the entire nation. So what you do generally is you take out kind of the ruling or the elite class and, just enough of the middle upper class people to where it's just the only people that are left over are just like the working man, right? And then you bring in a whole new ruling class. So you're taking out obviously the kings, the nobles, the priests, the people that carry some sort of weight. Now, just to tie this all together for you, I hope people are enjoying this. If you haven't already, make sure you like the broadcast and share the broadcast. And I know this is a little bit different tonight, but I just feel to teach on this stuff for a little bit. And I think people actually enjoy this sort of information. So make sure you like the broadcast, share the broadcast, and help us get the word out, though. Anyway, what was I going to say? Oh, so just to tie it all together for you, King Sennacherib, the king who exiles the north, he keeps coming down. He's continually trying to expand his empire. So as he goes further and further down, once you get through the north, you're going to get to the south. So he gets to the southern two tribes. He puts a siege on Jerusalem, And that's basically where you get all that talk of the letters that King Sennacherib wrote, and the different, right, he writes letters and they're like, no, don't read it in our language, read it in your own language. We know your language, but we don't want the people to hear it. And then the letters are laid before God in the temple, and God miraculously, with King Hezekiah and King Hezekiah and the prophet Isaiah, delivers the people from the hand of the Assyrians. Anyway, that's what's going on in the south. But what happens in the north? Well, here's what's interesting is 2 Kings chapter 17. 2 Kings 17. By the way, just an interesting thing, like a lot of the people that you know from the Bible tended to deal with the southern, like most of the most famous kings and prophets dealt with the southern tribes. But like some major people dealt with the northern tribes. So like Elijah and Elisha mostly dealt with the northern tribes. Like I said earlier, Ahab, Jezebel, northern tribes. Anyway, so let me see this real quick. Yep. Okay. So here's what it says. 2 Kings 17, verse 24. This is what I want to read to you. It says this. The king, so this is after, actually, let's read from verse 20. 2 Kings 17, verse 20. The Lord rejected all the seed of Israel and afflicted them and delivered them into the hand of spoilers until he cast them out of his sight. For he rent Israel, which is the northern 10 tribes, from the house of David, and they made Jeroboam the son of Nebat king, which is the guy who led the rebellion against Rehoboam, Solomon's son, because they said the people came to Rehoboam. They said, make it easier on us. And he said, give me 3 days. He took older counsel. He took younger counsel. He came back after 3 days, and he said, listen, here's the deal. You think the burden that my father had was heavy on you? My little finger is bigger than my father's thigh, which is basically like, get ready for it to get worse. And so the people were like, we're not having this. And so they chose Jeroboam. Jeroboam led a rebellion, and that's how you get the north, right? So he says, he rent Israel from the house of David, and they made Jeroboam the son of Nebat king. Now, what Rehoboam did was foolish, but God still didn't endorse the rebellion of Jeroboam. And Jeroboam drave Israel from following the Lord and made them to sin a great sin, which is that, what did Jeroboam do? He put a golden calf in the south at Bethel. He put a golden calf in the north at Dan. This is the south part of the north kingdom and the north part of the north kingdom, right? Because he said, I'm not going to send my people to Jerusalem. It's in a different country. I'm not sending all my people to worship in a different country. Their loyalty is going to be mixed. Kind of like today, like, to be honest, a little bit of a decent example today would be like, you know how some people, it really frustrates them that Christians have such a strong support for Israel. And they're like, why do all these Christians support Israel so much? And like, like you can tell some people it really bothers them. And like they support Israel more than they support America. Well, that's what happens when you have people like their religion, their relationship with God is so closely tied to another country. It's not tied to your own country. And so then that's kind of when you, and that's also why the U.S. government, like just from a governmental standpoint, is so careful to try and make sure that they promote Christianity. America's a Christian nation, because otherwise you're going to lose the Christians and you're going to lose their support for the nation. So anyway, that's what Jeroboam did, was he set up golden calves. Now, people tend to think, I'm gonna try and help you understand Jeroboam, because if you don't have good Bible knowledge, then you'll miss like little things like this. I'm enjoying teaching on this. I may go a little bit deeper into it. I'm going to go a little bit deeper into it. So we'll be back to 2 Kings 17 in just a second. Go to 1 Kings 11, which is when Jeroboam leads this rebellion. Or I'm sorry, maybe it's 1 Kings 12. First Kings 12. Now, this is super interesting. So basically, Rehoboam gets ready to fight to keep his kingdom. And God speaks to him and says, listen, don't do it. Don't fight against your brothers. You're not going to do that. It is what it is. You're the one who answered foolishly. Here's what it says about Jeroboam. And this is all going to tie into the Samaritans. And I think that tonight really is going to end up just laying the foundation for who the Samaritans were. And then the other nights we'll get into the salvation for Samaria portion of these broadcasts. But anyway, here's what it says in verse 25. Then Jeroboam built Shechem in Mount Ephraim and dwelt there, and went out from thence and built Penuel. Then Jeroboam said, which is just two cities that he built to be kind of capital cities. Then Jeroboam said in his heart, now shall the kingdom return to the house of David, if this people go up to do sacrifices. 1 Kings 12, verse 27. If this people go up to do sacrifice in the house of the Lord at Jerusalem, then shall the heart of the people turn again unto their Lord, even unto Rehoboam, the king of Judah, and they shall kill me and go again to Rehoboam, king of Judah. So exactly like what I said. He was like, if they keep going there to sacrifice, they're just going to love the people. They're going to fall in love with that kingdom, and they're going to leave me. Whereupon it says in verse 28, the king took counsel and made 2 calves of gold, and said unto them, it is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Behold, because it is, you see, for the south, Jerusalem's in the south. For the south, it's maybe a 1-day journey to get to Jerusalem from the major population centers. From the north, like we said the other day, it's 3 to 5 days. So he said, it's too much for you guys to go up to Jerusalem. Behold your gods, O Israel, which brought you up out of the land of Egypt. And he set one in Bethel, and the other he put in Dan. Now, here's what you need to catch. A couple things. Number one, what Jeroboam said right there is the exact same thing that Aaron said in Exodus 32, when Aaron made the golden calf originally. He said to the children of Israel, the exact same phrase, these are your gods, O Israel, which brought you up out of the land of Egypt. When he made the golden calf, when Moses was on Mount Sinai, right? And it says he set one in Bethel and the other he put in Dan, which Bethel's at the southern part, the other one's at the northern part. So he's like, look, it's a much easier travel. It's a much more convenient way to worship. It's much better this way. And this thing, the Bible says, became a sin, for the people went to worship before the one, even unto Dan. And he made a house of high places and made the priests of the lowest of the people, which were not of the sons of Levi. Which I've actually gone to Israel. I've seen these places, which is pretty cool. You can actually see, like, not so much in Bethel, but in Dan, you can see where they would, like, construct this stuff. And they actually, I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, in Dan, I believe is where it is, that you can walk through basically, I think where they think that Jeroboam put these golden calves, and it's like an exact replica of what the temple would have been. So you can see how he like tried to replicate the thing for the people in the north. Now, and also keep in mind, this is just a generation after King Solomon finished the temple. So he finished the temple, and then it's like just like one generation of people are like, it's such a long journey for us. Like, it's a long way for us to go to get to Jerusalem every year. And we got to go 3 times a year. So he made a house of high place and made priests of the lowest of the people, which were not of the sons of Levi. And Jeroboam ordained a feast in the 8th month on the 15th day of the month, like unto the feast that is in Judah, and he offered on the altar. So did he in Bethel, sacrificing unto the calves that he had made. And he placed in Bethel the priests of the high places which he had made. So he offered upon the altar which he made in Bethel on the 15th day of the 8th month, even in the month which he had devised in his own heart, and ordained a feast unto the children of Israel. And he offered upon the altar and burnt incense. So what's interesting here is Jeroboam, 2 things. Number 1, the golden calf issue. Let me talk about the golden calf issue. Because a lot of people, it's kind of like a little bit far-fetched. Okay. Why is... okay. Um, okay. So, what was I saying? Talking about the golden calf. So here's the thing about the golden calf. Because it seems kind of like far-fetched. Like, why in the world would they make a golden calf? Here's the thing that you have to understand about the golden calf. The cherubim, the Bible describes, has 4 faces. One is like a face of a human. One is like a face of a lion. One, I believe, is like a face of an eagle, if I'm correct. And one is the face of a calf. So part of the cherubim is that it kind of resembles like a calf, right? So when he sets up golden calves, there are scholars that think he was just setting up more cherubim, right? And the cherubim were over the ark. And so you can see how easy it was for him to go from we worship the God that's enthroned between the cherubim to we worship the cherubim that are on the ark. And that's basically what happened. Second thing is the changing of the feast. Now, the Israelites have a feast, or the people of the southern kingdom kept the feast when it was originally given by God, the 7th month, the 15th day, right? And it's a harvest festival. It's the Feast of Sukkot. It's the Feast of Tabernacles, but it's a harvest festival. It celebrates the fall harvest. Well, in the north, why move it to the 8th month? Well, in the north, just like is true in the United States of America, the harvest comes earlier for the south than it does for the north. The north, the harvest may be a month later. So it made more sense agriculturally to move the feast to the 8th month. Now, why am I saying this? I'm not saying this to excuse what Jeroboam did. There's no excuse for what he did. But here's the thing. The devil's deceptive. And people, because of you don't have the context, you read this stuff and you think to yourself, oh, so just so you read this sort of thing, and what you'll end up doing is just thinking to yourself, oh, that was dumb. Why would he make it? I'll never make a golden calf. But it's so easy to fall into that trap because it's deceptive. Why would he change the date? Well, it kind of makes more sense to do it on the 8th month and the 15th day. It kind of makes more sense. So you have to learn to follow or learn to read the Bible in its context so that you can see, like, Jeroboam wasn't an idiot. He was deceived. I'm not excusing what he did, but he wasn't like an idiot. He was trying to make things more convenient for people to worship and not lose his kingdom. And so that's what was going on with that. Now, just an important thing, because otherwise people read this stuff and they're like, wow, people back then were just dumb. It's like the same thing with like child sacrifice and abortion. Like, if you don't think back then that child sacrifice was just another form of abortion for people, it was inconvenient for them to have children, they didn't feel, it's what it was. It was the same thing. So, people don't understand that, and because they don't understand that, they're like, oh, wow, what terrible people that practice child sacrifice. They were doing the same thing that we do. I mean, we have a whole political party that's built on the promotion of abortion. In fact, the stuff that they do is worse because they specifically, and you know, I know that people don't necessarily like when you talk about this, but they specifically put Planned Parenthoods where there are black population centers. And if you look at quotes from the founder of Planned Parenthood, she said, I believe it was Margaret Sanger, she said that it was a good idea because it would help like keep down the number of undesirables. And she was talking about black people in the country with abortion. So people think this stuff is so far-fetched, and it's not. It's just the way people go. Anyway, 2 Kings 17. That's what happened. That was the sin. Verse 21. For he had rent the house of David. He had rent Israel from the house of David, and they made Jeroboam the son of Nebat, and Jeroboam drave Israel from following the Lord and made them sin a great sin, which was worshiping the golden calves. 2 Kings 17, verse 22. For the children of Israel walked in all the sins of Jeroboam, which he did. They departed not from them until the Lord removed Israel out of his sight, as he had said by all his servants, the prophets. So was Israel carried away out of their own land to Assyria unto this day. So the northern 10 tribes were taken out. And here's what it says in verse 24. The king of Assyria brought men from Babylon and from Cuthath and from Cutha and from Ava and from Hamath and from Sepharvaim. I have no idea how to say any of these countries. And placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel, and they possessed Samaria and dwelt in the cities thereof. And so it was at the beginning of their dwellings there that they feared not the Lord. Therefore the Lord sent lions among them, which slew some of them. Wherefore they spake unto the king of Assyria, saying, the nations which you have removed and placed in the cities of Samaria know not the manner of God of the land. Therefore he has sent lions among them, and behold, they slay them, because they know not the manner of the God of the land. So basically all the people the Assyrian king brought in were killed by lions. And so because God wanted to be worshipped on this land. And so they send a message to the king of Assyria and say, everybody that you sent here keeps dying by the hand of lions. You need to get the people to learn what God said, right? So here's what it said. Here's what it says happened. Then, verse 27, the king of Assyria commanded, saying, carry thither one of the priests whom you brought from thence, and let them go and dwell there, and let him teach them the manner of the God of the land. Then one of the priests whom they carried away from Samaria and came and dwelt in Bethel, and taught them how they should fear the Lord. Howbeit every nation, so they brought back a priest, because remember I told you they took out all the priests. They brought back a priest, and they said, teach them the religion that you guys originally had. But it says, howbeit, verse 29, every nation made gods of their own, and put them in the houses of the high places which the Samaritans had made, every nation in their cities wherein they dwelt. And the men of Babylon made Sukkot Benoth, and the men of Cuth made Nergal, and the men of Hamath made Ashima, and the Avites made Nibhaz and Tartak, and the Sepharvites burnt their children in fire to Adramelech and Anamelech, the gods of Sepharvaim. So they feared the Lord and made unto themselves of the lowest of them priests of the high places, which sacrificed for them in the houses of the high places. They feared the Lord and served their own gods after the manner of the nations whom they carried away from thence. Unto this day, they do after the former manners. They fear not the Lord, neither do they after their statutes or after their ordinances or after the law and commandment which the Lord commanded the children of Jacob, whom he named Israel, with whom the Lord had made a covenant and charged them, saying, You shall not fear other gods, nor bow yourselves to them, nor serve them, nor sacrifice to them. But the Lord who brought you up out of Egypt with great power and a stretched out arm, him shall you fear, and him shall you worship, and to him shall you do sacrifice. And the statutes and the ordinances and the law and the commandment which he wrote for you, you shall observe to do forevermore, and you shall not fear other gods. And the covenant that I have made with you, you shall not forget, neither shall you fear other gods. But the Lord your God you shall fear, and he shall not deliver you into the hand of all your enemies. Howbeit they did not hearken, but they did after the former manner. So these nations feared the Lord and served their graven images, both their children and their children's children, as did their fathers. So do they unto this day. Now, this was the whole point I was driving at. Basically, they move in a bunch of Assyrians. They move in a bunch of people from other nations, bring them into the land of Israel. They don't serve God, and so lions devour them. So they send back a priest. The priest teaches the people about God, and they basically mix worshiping God with worshiping the God of the Bible with worshiping their own gods. And that is the Bible account of where the Samaritans came from. Now, 2 Kings 18 is going to get into King Sennacherib getting to Jerusalem. But 2 Kings 17 is all about where did the Samaritans come from. And the Samaritans were the people that were left over in the land that worshiped the God of the Bible, but then mixed it with all these other religions and kind of were like welded it together to create a new religion, which still was very similar to the religion of the God of the Bible, but it wasn't the religion of the God of the Bible. And that is why the Jewish people did not like them. Because basically, they came, they took their religion, and then they mixed it with a bunch of pagan stuff. And to be honest with you, I'll give you the best example that Christians could probably understand today. The Samaritans were Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, that sort of thing. That's what they were. And to understand the level, which I'm in no way pro Jehovah's Witnesses and I'm in no way pro Mormons, right? But to understand the level of hatred, you have to understand there's a massive difference between us, what we believe, and Mormons, for example, right? Now, you may say, well, I don't really hate the Mormons, but just give me a second. The Protestants and Catholics, there's not nearly as big a gap between Protestants and Catholics as there is between Protestants and Mormons. A massive gap between Protestants and Mormons. A little bit of a gap between Protestants and Catholics. Protestants and Catholics went to war with each other. I mean, massive wars with each other for years because of the level of animosity between them. So if there was that, imagine how much animosity there would have been between the Samaritans and the Jews. And basically, many times, the Romans liked the Samaritans because they were a little bit more chill and they didn't like the Jews. So they were like, the Samaritans are basically cooperating with the with the occupiers, and they hated it. And that's why they hated the Samaritans, because the Samaritans were right there. They felt like they had taken their religion and perverted it, and they were half Jewish but not really Jewish because they had been corrupted. Maybe some of them had a little bit of Jewish blood, and that is why there was such great animosity. That was why they really didn't like each other. And that is why Jesus told all sorts of parables when he's trying to demonstrate a point about love. And he said, which one of the three was a neighbor to the Samaritan? The priest, the Levite, or I'm sorry, was a neighbor to the man who was hurt on the road? The priest, the Levite, or the Samaritan? The answer is the Samaritan. That's what made Jesus, his approach, very unique, because he was like, listen, you got to love the people. Didn't endorse their theology, didn't agree with their theology. In fact, as we'll see throughout the rest of the week, really disagreed with most of their theology, but disagreed with all their theology. But nonetheless, he still went after them, and most of them were saved. Anyway, let's give people an opportunity to sow seed. So if you want to give, I don't have my iPad here. It's not working. It's not connecting. So I just got to tell you, if you want to give, you can give by texting the word give to the number 239-300-2709. That's probably the best way to give tonight, unless you want, you already have our Zelle, Venmo, PayPal, Tithely. You can write a check to Velardo Ministries, send it into 940 Pondella Road, North Fort Myers, Florida 33903, and give that way. You can also give if you would like. What am I missing? PayPal, Venmo, Tithely, Zelle, Mail. And then I said the text to give already, but that's the number is 239-300-2709. You can give all those different ways. But yeah, little history for you on the Samaritans. Now we can talk the other three nights, which I mean, I hate if somebody missed tonight. They're not going to have this background. Hopefully this was interesting to you. Let me know in the chat if it was. And like I said, you can, what was I going to say? There was another little interesting fact I had for you about the Samaritans. I thought it was going to be a good one. But anyway, it's a fascinating study, and a lot of people don't know that stuff. So it brings to life the stuff when you read about the Samaritans in the Bible and what Jesus said about the Samaritans, Jesus' interaction with the Samaritans. You start to understand why Jesus said a lot of the stuff that he did. And why people felt the way that they did. Interesting fact for you. This is what I was going to say. Interesting fact for you. The Samaritans are still a group of people until today. And I believe there's just maybe 1,000 of them left. Actually, I want to look it up. There are still Samaritans today, and they still worship on Mount Gerizim, and they still do the Passover. They do blood sacrifice in Israel. Fascinating. Yep. 800 to 900. Only around 1,000 Samaritans remain today. The population used to be very large. But only around 1,000 are left. Actually, let me do this. just because I'm interested. I'm interested in how large their population was at the. Yeah, ChatGPT says 900. About. Their population once dropped below 150. Wow. I want to find when it was the largest. That's what I'm looking for right now. Okay, so during the time of Jesus, there were up to 1 million Samaritans. So you can see that's a significant population. Given that today in Israel, first of all, Israel probably had fewer people then. Today in Israel, I believe Israel has about 500 people. And so, or I'm sorry, 500, about 8 million people. So it's about a little over 10%. And probably back then was more. Anyway, I love you. God bless you. That's all I've got. We covered the news at the beginning. Have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow. Noon for noon prayer, 10:30 for the broadcast. God bless you. We love you.